Who's ready for some mental health? Como que no me convencen? Who's ready for some mental health? Excellent. Because this panel right here, Revolución 2024, needs to give them a huge shout out. When we asked panelists, moderators to correr la voz, we talk about these people. These people who straight out were like, let's go. And in 2 seconds flat, we're like, boleto, 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 boleto. And everything got sold. You would have thought they were the eloteros on the streets. And this wouldn't have been possible without our amazing moderator and a wonderful panelist. And as a thank you from Revolución, you all have a day access, of course. We want to invite you to join us for the comedy shows tonight. That's Ida Rodriguez, Gabriel Delorbe, Funny Brownie, Sifon Sound, Daniela. I mean, it's totally diverse. Everything we've been talking about, there's no one comedic voice. There's women, there's men, there's Caribbean, there's Mexican, there's Argentinian. I mean, listen, and I don't know if we're going to talk about soccer. I'm not getting involved in all that. But let's show up. Let's show up for our ending. Yeah? And we want to thank you exclusively for believing in mental health, believing in the panelists, supporting Revolución. So come on down. Like, you are, the pearly gates of the comedic heaven are yours. Okay? So just come in and occupy your seats. Bien. Our moderator for this panel is none other than Adriana Alejandre, founder of Latinx Therapy, which if you don't already know, you gotta find out. Because she has broken down, she has found pretty much every Latino, Latinx, Latina therapist there is on the planet, and all the things that they specialize in. And how do I know? Because I have looked them up. First gen, trauma, grief, gender, like the list goes on. And the panelists are indicative of that variety. Dr. Adriana Alejandre is a trauma therapist, mental health speaker, and podcaster who has presented at various conferences, academic conferences on racial trauma, mental health. As the founder of Latinx Therapy, a national bilingual mental health resource hub, she is dedicated to advancing mental health equity. In 2021, she launched the Alejandra Foundation to provide therapy grants for the Latinx community. With clinical experience from the Domestic Violence Center of Santa Clarita Valley and Strength United, she specializes in treating first and second generation BIPOC individuals with relationship issues, identity issues, depression, anxiety, and of course, our number one, trauma! Passionate about empowering clients, she helps them gain autonomy, overcome negative memories, and remember their worth. Please get up for Dr. Adriana Alejandre.
Hi everybody, no soy doctora, soy Adriana Alejandre, licensed certified therapist. Bienvenidos, thank you so much. I'm really excited for this panel. Everyone to take a humble seat right here, okay? And we're gonna go ahead and introduce each panelist one by one. There's a lot to talk about today. I'm really excited. You heard a snippet of Lisa Dodd's introduction, which did not do justice because Lisa has so much experience, 40 years of a career, right? Professionally and also personally when it comes to mental health. So let me introduce Lisa. Lisa Vidal is a New York native de Puerto Rico. Who else here is from Puerto Rico? Boricuas? She is an award-winning film and television actress and starred in ABC's The Baker and the Beauty. I saw it, I loved it. Miss Pat on BET, With Love on Amazon, among many others, like I said, in her 40-year career. In addition to acting, Lisa has a passion for music and enjoys singing and dancing, if you probably didn't know this. She currently lives in Los Angeles with her cousin and 3 kids. She is a breast cancer survivor and a vocal proponent of early detection, and we're also going to hear her advocate for addiction today. Let's welcome Lisa Vidal.
Sorry, please.
Next, Luis Cornejo. Luis is an indigenous licensed marriage and family therapist like myself and a certified sex therapist dedicated to supporting the LGBTQ plus and BIPOC communities. In addition to his work in mental health, Luis consults and assists in organizing fashion shows that celebrate diversity. He models as a form of advocacy and self-expression, and is also a speaker that focuses on queer mental health and identity. Through his podcast, Queer Magic, he amplifies voices and sparks empowering conversations within the LGBTQ community. Luis challenges stigmas in digital spaces and in his own family by setting boundaries that aim at making him feel emotionally safe and setting an example of what healthy respect looks like. Let's welcome Luis. Check out the fit, check out the fit. Okay.
OTV.
OTV. I'm sorry, call the witness here. Next, we have someone that I know personally from high school, actually. We go way back. Dr. Lisette Sanchez is a bilingual and bicultural psychologist, insight writer, and dynamic speaker. She earned a PhD in counseling psychology from the University of Oregon with prior studies at Columbia University and UC San Diego. She is the proud eldest daughter of hardworking immigrants de Mexico y El Salvador. Dr. Lisette has challenged gender stereotype norms such as la mujer es para la casa by prioritizing her career. Let's welcome Dr. Lisette Sanchez.
And sing.
Sorry, the mic is a little sensitive here, right?
Touched.
Baking someone.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know. We'll go. Doctora Yanira Hernandez. Last but not least, she is a first-generation Mexican-American bilingual trauma-focused licensed clinical social worker, speaker, and educator. Doctora Hernandez was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles and received her master's in social work and doctorate in educational psychology from USC. She is the founder of Andante Therapy, Inc., where she centers her work on first-generation professionals, undocumented, and immigrant communities using trauma and intersectionality lenses. Coming from a mixed status family herself, Doctora Yanira has challenged this limbo perception of what it looks to, quote-unquote, make it, and yet also feels stuck and oppressed due to her family's mixed status. Let's welcome Doctora Yanira Hernandez. Like just tossing the cards that I've already read. Okay, here. One moment, so I'm getting that. Excuse me, and thanks. It says, okay, everybody. So I just want to also share a little bit about myself as well, so you all feel a little more connected. Soy Mexicana y Guatemalteca. It is an honor to be here at Revolución Todo Guapis summit here these past couple days, right? You all are troopers for making it out all these days. It's amazing. And I'm also a first-gen professional and just first-gen in a lot of different things. I was a teen mom and struggled with postpartum depression. I have ADHD and anxiety. And so you might see some of my ADHD slip-ups because I did not take a message today, but that's okay. We're going to roll through it. And so before we get started, because we are going to talk about some very beautiful things, you're going to hear stories, but they're also going to be difficult, son verdades about mental health. So let's go ahead and take a collective restorative breath. So everybody, if you could just slowly inhale. That was too fast. Let it go. Save some air for others, okay? Let's take it slow. You're gonna inhale from your nose. Try to inhale from the belly for 4 seconds. In through the nostrils, slowly. Very nice. Hold it. Exhale out from the mouth, slowly. Forward time. That's right. Very good. Thank you so much. So now we have co-regulated the space a little bit through our nervous systems, communicating with one another. And I'm excited to get started here. So for today's panel, I think that there's a lot of different goals here that we have, but through storytelling and information sharing, we hope to inspire you to continue your healing, to advocate against stigmas, to gain insight on new information, or all the above. When it comes to mental health in the Latino and Latina community generationally, we actually do not heal alone. Our lineages have healed in community, and this is somewhat of a modern way, according to our ancestors probably, but it's a very valid way to heal. So you're gonna hear a lot of different stories on language. And I'm gonna start with a question for everyone here, for all of our panelists. As Latinos, Latinas, Latines, what is one stigma you've had to personally break, and what helped you in that journey? So we'll start here with you.
First I want to quickly say that I am so proud to be among these rock stars over here. My goodness, all of you guys, thank you. Like, I feel proud. I don't really even know you. Thank you. You know what? I think that for me, it was realizing that I didn't have control over everything. I did not have to do everything on my own, and that the world was a scary place, but that I needed to start to lead with faith and not fear. And I think that became something really powerful for me in my world, my career, my life. And because what we need to realize is that ultimately we're not in control of everything. So are we going to decide and make the choice to live fearfully and for our lives not to blossom into the best life we can have? Or are we just going to have a lot of faith that life is good, that people are good, that, there's a higher power, something stronger than us? So I would say that was a big thing for me.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit farther already in terms of this elements of not feel like you have to do it alone, as Steiner said earlier, and using your faith, right?
Exactly, absolutely. Power and faith. I'm gonna. I know we're gonna talk about this, but really quickly, I know you didn't. My bio is not updated, but you said I live in Los Angeles with my 3 children. Well, one of my children died 3 years ago, my son, and so he's alive, but he's in heaven. And if I did not have faith, I don't know where I would be. I wouldn't be sitting here right now. That I will tell you. And it's terrible how he died. But again, I think through great pain and trauma and tragedy that we can come through with great purpose and with great purpose in helping someone else through our pain. And that is what I've committed to do after going through what I went through with my son. So I don't do it by myself. I call, I'm a faithful person. I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and God. Those are my peeps. That's how I get through. You do, I don't ever say anyone is wrong or right. I just say, just believe that there is power within us, right? Within us, we have strength and power. And so to find and dig in to find that power deep down inside of us so that we can rise above it and we can love ourselves. Or we can love others because we have to love ourselves first, which is what I was talking about before. And yeah, so I don't do anything by myself, and it does take a village.
Yeah. And so, this panel is called Rompiendo Stigmas. which is something that we can't do alone and without not sharing our stories. We have to share our stories in order to break these stigmas. The same question for you was a stigma that you feel like you have overcame.
Yeah, so I grew up in a home where religion was the central point of everything we did. We went to church every week, almost 2 times, I would say. Sometimes we prayed. We talked about the Bible. And for a long time, I realized, and this has taken years for me because my relationship with religion has definitely shifted and grown. But back then, it was what we were taught. And I used it to help myself, whether it was prayer, whether it was being in church, whether it was trying my best to be, a good Christian. And when I first got to college, I realized that a lot of who I was didn't align with what I was taught. And there was definitely an internal struggle for me around feeling like I wasn't a good person, or that I was sinning, or that there was something wrong with me, even though I had gotten this amazing, education about God and religion from my parents. And when I decided to go to grad school, this was years after college, and I found myself, I went through a lot of my own process of really figuring out who I was. When I got to grad school, we were actually asked to go to therapy. And, the funny thing is, I was coming into this program wanting to become a therapist, wanting to help others, but I had never been in therapy. And the only thing I knew about therapy was from TV, from movies, from books. And therapy was always this almost like negative thing, where crazy people went to therapy, or people who were unstable went to therapy, right? People who couldn't do things on their own would go to therapy, right? They weren't strong. And I was taught through religion that I had to be strong, that I had to have faith, that it's almost very privatized. This is between you and God. This is within your family. And so that was something that I held very close to. And the first few months I was in therapy, I remember my therapist, would welcome me in. This was the first therapist I had ever spoken to. She was Salvadoreña. She was very small, so I remember going in and seeing her at the kitchen up at one of my cousins. But she was in this little suit, and it was in Long Beach. And I just remember sitting in the chair, and I was sitting there, what do I talk about? What do I say, right? So cautious and so scared of sharing parts of myself that I had not talked to anyone about. And this went on for months, where I think at one point, I don't know if she got frustrated or something happened in, what I was saying, but she looked at me, she's like, Luis, we still have 3 more months of you being required to come to therapy, and I feel like maybe you don't want to be here. Is there something that's coming up for you in here? And I kind of thought that question, I didn't like it. It threw me off a bit because I was trying so hard to guard myself, and she saw it. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's seeing what I'm doing. And she asked me, what's your relationship like with your parents? And I, the first thing I said was, oh, it's good. It's good. I see them, we go out to lunch, and they're like, do they know you? And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, do they know you as a person? And I remember breaking down and remembering that there were so many things I had not shared with them because I was so afraid. I was so scared of what they were going to say, how they were going to respond, and the fear of rejection, because it is very common for so many of us in the queer community. This is not something that we make up. It's a statistic, right? What leads to homelessness, to substance abuse, to teenagers, right, being in the street because they're rejected, right, from families who are more than anything scared because they don't understand. And so for me, going into this therapy space for the first time, and coming in with all of these internalized fears and beliefs that people like me didn't have to go to therapy because we had God. People like me didn't need to talk to someone else because I could talk to God. And I learned through my first therapy experience. I've actually been to a different therapist now over the last 10 years since I started grad school, because it's helped me so much, and each person has given me something different, and I've gone for so many different reasons. But what I got from therapy was that it was not, within a belief system. I wasn't going in there training God for, this therapist. It was really about getting help, getting support, being seen. And through that first experience, I was able to, finish my program started seeing other therapists, doing a lot of my own personal work. And then here I am, years later in my own private practice where I do specialize in working with queer and BIPOC folks, where I also have allowed myself to be who I am. And a part of that was my love for fashion, my love for self-expression. And so I went into that venture the last 2 years, and I've been able to organize fashion shows. I've been able to walk in fashion shows. I've been able to work with designers from so many different places. And all of that happened because I allowed myself to finally be seen, and I accepted myself. And even though with my family, there's still a struggle, and I think it'll always be that way. I've learned to accept that they love me in the capacity that they can, and then the rest of it I've mentioned of myself. And I'm a big believer that love is something we learn through others, because we're born into this world depending on others, on our parents. We won't survive if we don't have that. And at the same time, you also learn along and through that to love yourself. And that is probably the hardest part, because it's easier for us to love others because we're taught to do that. But it's so much harder to look at ourselves and say that we love ourselves. And so,
Match ladies. Thank you much to you like for attention.
Thanks, you. Thanks. I mean, it's such a treat to be up here with everyone. And, when you think about stigma, often what I think about is the shame that is associated with any stigma that we experience. And I want to talk about the shame that I experienced, and I'm letting it joy out. In here, how many of you were told, like, we don't talk about money. You gotta be just grateful for what we have. Yeah. Like, have a mouth. You got a roof over your head. You have all the basic needs. What else to meet? Just a grateful for it. So then you start to feel ashamed about, okay, we don't talk about this. Well, if you don't have these conversations, we're holding ourselves trapped. We're not understanding our worth. And that was a big process that I experienced as I was going through school, as I then graduated and finally got my first job. I didn't know how to negotiate my salary. I was just having some day in the job. That's my job. But that was it then. And then I started realizing, hey, I have way more work than my colleagues. Well, can you be the same though? Like that's done. And I would have these moments where I maybe vent to my mom or to somebody, you shop every on the job. You keep showing up. You keep working hard. And they'll see you. They will see the efforts that you're putting in, and they will reward with your counterweight. Just like you can kind of working hard. And I see a lot of you lying. I see a lot of you shaking that. That advice is kind of a place of scarcity. That advice is kind of a place where, like, my mom grew up in a very rural area in the suburb. She didn't have access to education. She learned how to read through a traveling school teacher. Every penny matters. And so it's always like that scarcity. Like, you might run out, you gotta keep what you have, because if you ask for more, what happens? They get fired. You'll lose and encourage won't have it on. And so on my journey, so I'm a first gen professional. I specialize in kids first gens. And a lot of work that I do, we talk about the money trauma so much, because now you're entering the workforce and you're, again, watching others' time. Like, why, what's going on? Like, I'm working on it. I'm doing all of the things I'm told for space to work. But what we weren't really told was it's okay to talk about money. It's okay to not feel ashamed about it. And in fact, we should be talking more about money, right? And also, I didn't do this intentionally, but today I realized I'm wearing all my favorite colors. So you gotta think about that green. You gotta understand your self-worth. And what helped me understand my self-worth was when I entered entrepreneurship, when I started to confide in my colleagues. I started to reach out for support from others, because I was so used to, like, which of my parents feel like, my parents come out for me a certain kind of support. But in this area, this is an area that they're still learning, they're still growing. And I've always been, your place no more to share parents a lot of things. And I remind myself, this is one of those roles where I want to learn from my peers. I want to grow. So talking to my peers, reading books like Joanna Gonzalez, the Gun Cash book, First Gen Money, written by First Gen. And the option was First Gen Entrepreneur, and I know my work. And it is so special and I hope that you all today understand your worth and raise your rates.
Absolutely, that's a deep intergenerational stigma that runs and we because of fear. Yeah, so we're hearing a lot of fear is connected is at the root of stigmas. Look what I Daniels Hernandez. Yeah, oh, I resonated do so much with that. But I want to shed light a little bit on a stigma that I feel like I'm still working on, which is body image. I think so, which I'm glad to see because Gorita Chronicles did so much for me. I feel like my inner child, so this is a topic that I don't really talk about, and I hope that in speaking with you all, maybe we all can resonate it to some level because I do feel like it's still stigmatized. So body image, I think, especially being Latinas, women in Latina households, right? We're told how we should look like, how we should eat, right? So I remember hearing messages since I was like 7, 8 years old about not eating too many tortillas because I was not going to look good for my quinceañera dress. Imagine at 8, 9 years old, you're receiving those messages at how you're gonna look at 15. And as we know, especially I come from a traditional Mexican Catholic household, right, where I had to have a quinceañera, especially being the eldest, you know, and I think about often how that experience really shaped me because it was not until I remember hearing a lot of tíos and tías telling me like, ay, mija, otra tortilla, ¿cómo te vas a ver para tus 15 años? But this is like at 7, 8 years old, already hearing those messages. And I recall that by when I was in 5th grade, I had lost about 50 pounds. And everyone was like, hi, la Yani, ya soy flaquita, right? So hearing those messages that being thin is something that society needs, right? And we received it a lot of those messages in TV, right? In novelas, right? And just all the shows that we watch. And for me, it was what my family didn't know is that I wasn't just flaquita, I was depressed. I had lost my appetite because I was depressed. And that looking back, I think that was one of the first times that I really experienced kind of had issues with my mental health. And just really seeing how it impacted me during even as an adolescent. Because then even when I started growing up, I wanted to make sure that I had to fit in a specific size because then I was too gordita or I wasn't going to look good enough, right? And how it really shaped my my own love for myself, right? Even going on to college or even dating, right? That I needed to look a certain way, right? So just really redefining that I'm in my señora era and these curves are gonna be curvy and that's okay, right? And just really embracing and loving myself within because even now as I'm thinking of entering motherhood, some of the thought too is like my body's gonna change, right? And really embracing that it's okay if my body changes and I still look the ish, you know, I still got it. So it's really, really important for me to really cultivate that self-love and really identify the messages that we've been receiving since our childhood on how we should look like, because they're so ingrained and really narrate a lot of how we move as adults. Right. So for me, that's something that I don't speak a lot on, but it is something that I continuously work on. Absolutely. I think that actually too, all of us, we've experienced it at some points in our lives, is that it's not what our families are used to seeing probably on the novelas, around what maybe what they've said before in the news. It's irritability most of the time. It's impatience. It's that short fuse. It's not always just crying. So you're going to be hearing everybody's, a glimpse into everybody's stories as we go into individual questions now, and just listen for that symptomology within their mental health stories. Lisa, I have a question for you. You have publicly shared about hardships, including you and cancer survivor, and also grief, the loss of your son. How have stigmas impacted your healing journey? If you could talk to us a little bit about some parts of those painful experiences and what helped you through.
Yeah, well, when I went through breast cancer, it was in 2016, and it was kind of at one of the highest points of my son's drug addiction. First of all, let me just quickly say that my son was a phenom soccer player, incredible, beautiful young boy. And at 16, he was at the tryouts for a junior Olympic training program. And he was badly injured in that tryout by another player. And the team doctors, you know, they did surgery, had broken bones, and they put him on Oxycontin. And that was the beginning of the end of my son. We went through an 11-year drug battle with him. Unfortunately, addiction runs rampant in my family. And unfortunately, my son had the addiction gene. And so it can happen to anybody. My son didn't come from an abusive background, all the stereotypes that they try to say about addicts and, you know, families that have children who are addicted or people who are addicted. It's heartbreaking. And so part of what I want to be a part of breaking is the shame behind addiction, because it's a disease and it needs to be treated just like cancer gets treated. Anyone who is sick needs to go to a doctor. And it's not about shame. It's not about thinking people who have addiction issues are degenerates or losers or bad people. And that is a disgusting stereotype, stigmatism that we as a society have put addiction under. And I am part of an organization right now called Cure Addiction Now, where I've started speaking publicly about my son's journey. And this organization funds different trials, and we are trying to come up with a vaccine to stop addiction, to give even children at a certain age so that it blocks the ability for them to become addicted. And so I'm very passionate about this, and it's kind of my number one right now, even more than the breast cancer awareness, even though I take part in that too. I am a cancer survivor, went through a double mastectomy. And thank God I caught it early. It runs in my family, my mother, my aunt, my sister, and then me. And to tell you the truth, when I went through breast cancer, I didn't have time to think about it. All I cared about was, I got to keep my son alive. I have to work, because I didn't have time for self-care. I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself. I needed to work because I'm the provider of my family, and I needed to try to keep my son alive. So I went through that. Doctor was like, so these are the options. This is what I need, radiation, this, cut one breast out. My husband was like, what would you do? She was like, I would do a double mastectomy because of I was like, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get it through. I got to get through this. I got to get home. I got to be okay for my kids. I got to see what my son is. And he was at the height of his drug addiction. And it was torture, you guys. It was torture. I mean, in and out of rehabs, which are a joke. A lot of them are money grabbers. We want to expose all of this. People making my son feel ashamed, losing his friends, people talking about our family. We have a good family. He comes from a loving family. But people can't help themselves but judge and criticize and think, oh, they must have been something. They must have done something. She's not a good mother. Or, he must have been exposed to something. He must have been abused. No. And the deeper he got into addiction, the more depressed he became. We went to doctor after doctor after doctor. People want to throw him on Prozac, on this thing, on that thing. We are not treating addiction the right way in this country at all, in the world. We've been doing it all wrong, as far as I'm concerned. I have lived through it with a child, and my son died when he was 28. He shot himself in the head because he couldn't deal with it.
Why?
So then I also had to deal with his suicide and the fact that I was out of town and I couldn't say goodbye to my baby boy. And that killed me. So I'm here to talk about it. I'm here to expose that horrible stigma behind addiction. Because people who have addiction issues, they're not animals, they're not dogs, they're not bad people, they're not losers. We have to look at it differently. We have to change the way we deal with it, the way we think about it. And Luis, I'm so proud of you that you are helping people. And through what you do, all of you, I'm just saying though, I know that people also become addicts because they feel shame, because they feel like there's something wrong with them. And there's nothing wrong with you. And for me, I'm going to tell you, like, from my point of view, I always taught my son, God loves you. You are beautiful to him. There is nothing you can do that's going to destroy that. There's nothing you can do that's going to change that. He created you exactly the way you're supposed to. And you can embrace that. You don't need to be ashamed. You're sick, babe. I would tell him, you're sick. And be like, I hate myself. Why can't I stop? Why do you still love me? I tell you, what I went through with my son, nobody would believe it. But then again, people would believe it because a lot of people are going through it. That's the thing right there, right? So, I tell you, it takes a village. Therapy. You shouldn't have to. A lot of therapy. I'm a big therapy believer. I'm a praying girl too. And I find my friends who love me, who support me, who stand by me, who don't turn their back on me when I'm shitty to be around, or sad, or not feeling like to be fabulous sometimes. Because we can't. We're human beings. And we can't always be what everybody else wants us to be. Sometimes we just need to be. And we need to be real about where we're at. And sit in the space that we're in, accept it, and love ourselves, and be kind to ourselves. Because life can throw you some shit. Right? And take that compassion and hold it to yourself. And then share it with somebody else. Have compassion and patience with other people. And be kind. And understand that maybe somebody else is going through something too. Right? You have to be mindful of that. And then boundaries are important, and boundaries are important. Be careful who you surround yourself with. Be careful what you allow in your space. I think all these things are part of healing and finding your way through trauma and tragedy, because we're all going to have our share at some point, right? So just be mindful of that. This.
And thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing that. I want to take a moment and ask the audience if you can raise your hand if you know someone that who has struggled with addiction. Okay, keep your hand up if that person received help.
Exactly.
Around. It wasn't that many years up. Thank you. So thank you for raising awareness, continuing to advocate, because this is definitely a subject, especially in the Latino community, how much guilt and shame exist. Like you were talking in your keynote, right? Just within each other. We just kind of throw ourselves under the bus, or throw the person that's struggling under the bus. And because of fear, because of lack of education, because of their own triggers, so many different things. But we really have to be there for the individual and the individuals, caregivers, right, that are also helping, that loved one. So thank you so much. Doctora Yamia, you share very openly about your experience as the eldest in the Latino families. And you also share information about trauma. What barriers do families like yours, like ours, experience when it comes to seeking therapy, in addition to what we've talked about today already? We're so valuable. Am I prepared? First of all, thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing your story. And I think that for me, as we spoke, being first gen, right? Being the eldest, right? I think oftentimes when I think about the eldest experience, it's multi-layered. It intersects because I'm not just first gen. I'm not only the eldest, but also I think about growing up in South Central. I also think about my parents' immigration status. They're undocumented. So I grew up in a mixed status family. So when I think about my role as being the eldest hija, right, the eldest sister, shout out to my little brother, he's here in the audience. But I talk about a lot about my experience with parentification. And for those in the audience who don't know what parentification is when there is a role reversal with the parent on caregiver and the child. And now the child has responsibilities that are inappropriate for their age, right? And this is causing psychological distress on the child, right? So for me, the way that parentification showed up as being the eldest is that I was the translator in my family, right? And I still am, and sometimes I switch off with my brother, but for the most time it's pregúntale a Yanni. And I'm like, no le pregunten a Yanni, Yanni no sabe, but it's still kind of being the eldest, right? That it's like as the eldest, right? And having been exposed to a lot of the legal and financial difficulties that my parents were having at such a young age, I recall that at the age of 6, 7, once I was learning how to speak English and learning how to read English, my parents were already telling me, mira, mija, ¿qué dice este papel? Right? So being exposed to a lot of those challenges that my parents were having really forced me not to want to ask for things to my parents because I'm like, wow, they're having financial difficulties. Wow, they're having legal issues. So what I'm going through doesn't really matter because those are real issues, right? And then another aspect too was because my parents were undocumented, my parents worked extraneous hours, right? So they woke up at 6 a.m. and they wouldn't be home till 6 p.m. So I was in charge of taking care of my brother, right? So my mom would always be like, cuida tu hermanito. So I had to make sure that he was okay, because if he wasn't okay, then I was definitely not going to be okay with my parents, right? And so I had to take care of him and just be almost a second parent to him and really internalizing what it meant to be the responsible one, right? I carried that as a badge of honor, but I'm realizing as I got older that it's not a badge of honor. Like, I'm tired of being the responsible one. I don't want to be the responsible one. Somebody take care of me, and the thing is that a lot of that is because, I had to kind of step up, and I don't blame my parents because my parents' undocumented status, tenían que trabajar, they have to work and they had to do what they had to do, right? But I think that's being part of a mixed status family, that's something that we have to do for our parents. And another aspect too, I think that secrecy is something that really was very embedded in my family, right? Oftentimes my parents would get into arguments, siempre me decían, no le vas a decir a tu papá. Then my dad would, no le vas a decir a tu mamá, right? But they would tell me what was going on in the conflicts. And at such a young age, I was exposed already to the family drama, what was happening with the tias, with my grandmother, with my grandparents. And some of them were trauma, right? And I had to carry that. I felt like I was such a little adult, right? Because I knew so much of what was happening in the family. And I think about how a lot of us who are the first gen or eldest daughters, by the way, shout out to any eldest daughters here or who the eldest. Yes. Yes, because it really, we as we continue to navigate adulthood, we carry this kind of being the responsible one, right? And this hyper independence that yo puedo sola, right? And I have to be Miss Independence, like Neo told us. But now it's like, no, like we need to be able to lean into our support. We've been talking about comunidad, right? So we should be able to lean into our support system and ask for help and that includes therapy. Because I know it took me a while for me to say, damn, like something is coming up for me and I'm not okay. And man, y'all don't know how long it took me to accept that even though I was a therapist, that I also needed therapy. Right? Because sometimes as healers, we're like, no, yo ayudo a las demás personas, right? But we for ourselves, sometimes it's so hard to seek support. So I remember that my first time, my experience in seeking therapy was also in grad school, but because I noticed that I was in some of those classes were talking about trauma, and I was like, whoa, I'm resonating a little too much with that content here. And that's when I realized, I'm like, wow, I started kind of connecting the dots, and like so much is coming up for me. And that's what really forced me to go to therapy the first time, and so I think I really encourage any of my eldest daughters here, eldest and hermanas, to lean into your comunidad, lean into seeking support and therapy, right? It's okay. It doesn't mean that we're not good enough. It doesn't mean that something is wrong with us, that we're no longer Miss Independent. It just means that we can be Miss Independent and also ask for help and also go to therapy, right? So, yeah. That's what we got to see stuff.
I think it's the big different place if our grandparents, our parents have that mentality. Pero no se pudo for various reasons, right? Society just wasn't there yet, but we are also in a privileged era, in that sense, where we do have more resources now towards mental health. So thank you so much for sharing. That also took me back to when I sought therapy for the first time. It was somewhat by choice. I went, I was in my bachelor's program taking interest in psychology, and I wasn't doing well. I had gotten a letter that I was going to get on probation, or I was on probation. Let's pause right here. How are you? And I'm never going to forget that, because I just started crying. I didn't know at 18, 19 years old that I wasn't well. And he's like, I talked to him about what was going on. I had just gone through a traumatic breakup. I was pregnant. I'm trying to make it through college. I was a disappointment to my religious parents, for getting pregnant out of wedlock, and so I went to therapy or to the campus counseling, and I couldn't say, because my mom had told me, we don't talk about our issues to anyone else. I got into so much trouble for not telling them that I was pregnant first, because I didn't feel emotionally safe. So it didn't make sense for me to reach out to them for help, right? And so this is exactly how we continue to eliminate stigmas, sharing our stories. Doctora de Sanchez, you specialize in first gens, and we'd like to hear 2 common taboos within first gen families that keep showing up, that we continue to perpetuate generation after generation.
Sure.
I'm not sure. Okay, good. A lot of what I'm sharing is going to be very similar to what the community I'm sharing, because these are the most common experiences that first gens have. So we'll be hearing about hyperdependence and scientists. Okay. So with hyperdependence, many first gens, so not at the CEDAS, they experience this the most, where they place the role in adults as child, so that participation. But all first gen are often placed with a lot of additional responsibilities, a lot of additional obligations and expectations that are placed on them from when they're very, very young. So you learn, everyone is relying on me. I have to do this for everyone else. I see myself as the eldest daughter, so I was like, it resonates a lot with me. But I know my younger brother also felt that. So my brother and I had a 6-year age gap. So I moved out at 18. I went to college. I was brainwashed for my parents to leave, but that's a story for another day. But my brother himself also then had to take over some of these responsibilities that I could not take care of anymore because I was physically there. So this hyper-independence happens across, regardless of the birth order. So I'm not like that, regardless of the birth order, you experience education, you experience this expectation of and have to do this all by itself. And like the thing I really shared, like, who helps me? Like, who helps me? Well, we're too scared to ask for it. Like, and we are told that we can't do that because what happens when we ask for help? We're perceived as weak. We worry that someone will think that I'm an imposter. Because I discovered as a fraud that I don't belong to that state, so I ask for help. And that's not the reality. When we ask for help, that's when we develop tools to care better for ourselves and care better for the people around us. Because heal people heal people. So that's our hyper-independence. So the silence connects so much to that hyper-independence, right? Because you don't want to ask for help. You don't want to talk about things. Because what happens when you share with someone that they're not doing well? No. But Diana, I appreciate you so much sharing what it was like for you in that office hour with a full, how are you living through it? Like that professor saw you as someone who is understood surveying, then let's pause and slow down. We don't always have to be in survival mode. But we have to be in survival mode, and so we're silenced. So you can't, we don't ask for help. We don't share what's going on with us until someone pauses to see us in that moment. So I know I'm saying these are common taboos, but I want you to also hear, what do I do when I see someone I love, someone I care about, fall into these patterns? When I see someone I love constantly just do it all on their own, that's when you need them like, hey friends, I see you got some things working out. What can we do to help you right now? Sometimes it helps us to ask. It might be easier when someone offers something. What can I do to help you? Like, oh, I see that you're moving all over the place. Let me carry one. Can I help you carry one of these ads? Can I help you? Starting small, offer that. And then we'll say with the segments, begin to share, right? We model and be comfortable with reciprocity. So, share yourself. I'm she's insane. But you, do you have a minute for me? Do you hold some space for me? But I'm so tired. And sometimes it's not about going deep into what I was impacting us. It's just, can we just sit together and watch Gordon Bear Chronicles? Let's break that silence. Talk about what's going on. I think that's great.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Strong. Let's understand this out. Absolutely. And we're going to talk about language because that's what everyone is touching on, right? That's going to be our last question for all of you. But let's go to Luis. Luis, in a very public and graceful way, you've been highlighting clear joy and also some hardships that the LGBTQ plus community experiences, not just online, but also on the ground. I've seen your stories in physical spaces. Heavy stigma exists, and I've seen that folks that identify as LGBTQ seems like they can never win, right? If they go to therapy, they're seen as crazy. If they share a negative experience, that they may get digitally harassed or invalidated, as you have. What messages can you share with people listening here and virtually about how people can break stigmas within the LGBTQ community and how they get support?
Yeah, I think, first of all, the joy and the struggle we coexist. So I don't want people to think that we're just the tragedy. We also celebrate, love one another, support each other in community. And that has been a huge part of what has helped me move along in my journey. And I would say to everyone here that the biggest thing that I've learned in my work and that I would offer you is to unlearn this idea, this separation that LGBTQ plus and queer people are other, that they're not a part of you. They are. They're your siblings, your aunts and uncles, sometimes your parents, your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers, your ancestors. We've existed since the beginning of time, as all of you have. And so my biggest takeaway from my clients and what I've learned is that they're never just a queer person, a gay person, a lesbian person. They're someone's family. They're someone's loved one. They're someone's friend. And when we unlearn that idea of othering, we can start to see humanity and we can start to recognize that there's so many folks like me who walk the tide within our families because of shame, because of stigma, because it's not safe. And you may see me, and I think for me, I like to be seen. I love the idea of expressing myself, but we're not all like me. We're very different, we're diverse. And so my biggest thing to offer is to remember that we don't exist in one way or another because we're like you. We're part of the community, the Latino community. We're part of the queer community, right? We talk about intersectionality, right? And how all of our identities make us who we are. And this is not just about here as LGBTQ plus people. This is about all of you. Dismantling gender norms about how you're supposed to exist, how you're supposed to behave, how you're supposed to dress. This is about us building a better world where we don't have to force men to act like they need to be strong and can't go to therapy and can't cry, but we don't have to force women to think that their value comes from becoming a mother or even staying at home. this is getting rid of all of that and allowing ourselves to exist as we are. And LGBTQ plus people have always been at the forefront of that. They've been the ones that have gotten packed, that have gotten discriminated against, that have gotten pushed to the side, and yet we're the ones that inspire. We're the ones that create things, right? All the fashion, all the makeup, all these things that so many people love. And even for men, I worked with so many men who have come to see me. And it's amazing to me because when I started my career, I never thought that I would work with and I have so much of my own trauma with men being bullied and with my own family members that it's actually one of my favorite clients to work with is the cis straight man who comes to see me and says, no, they come to see me and they go, Luis, like, I honestly, like, there's just something about you, this energy, it just feels almost like eternal, but I see you and it just feels safer to me. And I would tell some of my colleagues sometimes, I think it's this fear of how fragile masculinity is and time is that, that's why we exist, right? That's why people like me exist, right? Where it's not about holding one energy, it's about showing you that we don't have to be one thing. We don't have to follow what people think and exist this way. It's safe and it's okay for us to be ourselves. And we don't have to be like me or like any other person. Be yourself. It's just really about letting go of that narrative and these ideas that we have been given about othering others, right? We do it all the time, even within our community, right? When we talk about folks who are Afro-Latinos, who are indigenous, we other people, and yet we're a community. And the only way that we're going to move forward is together, all of us. That's the only way that we're going to be strong enough. So that's the way that you can support. And also come away with open heart, open mind, be willing to learn, be willing to make mistakes and let people teach you. Yeah, makes sense.
So I think advocating is another way that we can eliminate stigmas. We can come together, right, as you're hearing, as a community. We can advocate for LGBTQ plus folks. We can advocate for people who are in addiction, in recovery. We can advocate for the eldest daughters and for first gens as well. We can advocate, use our voice, come together, figure things out without judgment, without shame to eliminate. Now, final question before we potentially have time to open it up to the audience is that language, like we said, is a huge factor in Rompiendo Stigmas. Which statements, this is a question for everyone, which statements need to be eliminated to help our community break the stigma of seeking help and why? So, for example, la terapia es para locos, or cuidar la salud mental, es para los locos. You're so bipolar, that's so harmful too. So, I'll start with you, Dr. Yankiran, and then I'll come down with Lisa.
Yeah, oh man, so many. But I think the one that comes up for me is that la ropa sucia se lava en casa nomás, right? That we keep everything in the home, right? And I always say la ropa sucia se lava donde sea. There's lavanderias everywhere, right? And the thing is that when we keep just the narratives, the messages, the secrets within us, we feel shamed, we feel isolated because we believe that we're the only ones navigating that experience, right? Because we don't talk about it, right? And it further just really kind of emphasizes on this aspect of secrecy. Tenemos que tener secretos en la casa, like don't tell anyone. I worked in schools and worked with children for so long, and oftentimes a lot of the things that I would see is that they would say, no, mi mamá no me deja que te venga yo a ver, que venga a agarrar consejería or terapia, right? Because ¿para qué le estás contando a la terapeuta lo que está pasando, right? So oftentimes, they would get shamed for seeking support. So if we think about how early on we're having those messages about seeking support and that everything stays in the house, right? But as we know that heal people, heal others, right? Heal people. And I think it's important that we share our stories. If there's one thing that we've all shared is the power of storytelling, the power of comunidad, right? So it's so important to really share our experiences, what we're having difficulties, what we're challenges, because we don't know our amiga, our amiguis, next to us are probably struggling with the same thing, right? So I think it's something that I really just kind of boils within me every time I hear que nomás todo lo que se habla se queda nomás aquí, right? As in the families, right? And we hear that a lot probably during like the holidays or the fiestas, right? Because no le voy a decir a nadie porque no quiero que nadie se entere, ¿qué dirán, right? Va a decir la gente. So I just think that really kind of demystifying that and that there's so much power to our truth, to our stories, to our narratives, and that's one way that we don't feel as isolated, right? We don't feel as isolated knowing that perhaps others are navigating the same thing as we are.
Thank you.
All right. Oh my God, you're so ready. And I think what really came to mind was you have to stay strong and you have to be positive. Right. And when I hear that, what I hear is someone minimizing the emotional experience of someone else and invalidating them. You don't deserve to have emotions. We don't have emotions. Right? We struggle so much. Your ancestors struggled so much. So then you should just be happy and be strong because emotions are weakness. And so for me, when I think of how to challenge the stigma the most, it really is what we're trying to, I think the bigger message is emotions are meant to be looked through and not avoided. We have to feel them. And there's nothing wrong with having a day where you feel sad, a day that feels a little bit harder. It's just like you need to extra worried, extra anxious, whatever it might be. But we need to learn how to move through those emotions. And we will never learn if every time I tell someone, hey, I'm having a little bit of a hard time, and they tell me, well, just be strong and just think of it. What's yeah. Okay. No, I'm seeing you like, oh, so for you all, thinking about what that looks like for each and every one of you, when you start to have that fear, and you maybe start saying it to yourself, I should be able to handle this. I should be able to just do this all the way alone. Remember what we talked about earlier? You ask for help, offer the help. And, feel good emotions. You don't have to avoid them. You don't lose to that. And find therapists. So I want to like how to take that. They take you and you help.
Yeah.
For me, I had one that came up instantly because both my parents would say it to me. My dad is from Morelia, Michoacán, and my mom's from Guatemala. And whenever I mentioned any hardship or any feeling of sadness, they would always say, "Ponte a hacer algo." My dad was like, "What can you do allá?" And I would say, "Ponte a unos gastos." And that was always like their response was, "Ponte a hacer algo." And the reason why I share that is because not only has it transpired in my life until earlier on that idea of hustle mentality, I was the overachiever. I was the one that had straight A's. I was the one that didn't sleep until finishing a project. Perfectionism came into play. All of these ideas about constantly working hard, which isn't a bad value, right? Because I mean, it is a great thing for us to want to dedicate the time and love into things that are important to us. And at the same time, it was during those hardships where that was the response, right? It wasn't, oh, you're doing great, yeah, keep going. It was, oh, you're sad, you don't have time for that. Keep going, keep working, do something, keep your mind busy. And I learned later on, as I became a therapist, how my parents were also suffering and how they were doing it silently because they were so busy. And they were, the story of the immigrant, right? They came here to this country without speaking English. They bought their first home, they paid it off, they bought their cars, they took me through college, they helped raise my siblings, they helped other family members come to this country and get their legal status. They worked very hard. And they're now in their 60s, going 70, and they're still working. They can't stop. And whenever I bring it up, they'll tell me, well, so we're supposed to do. And so for me, the reason why it's emotional is because I think about how that was something that I held as a value for myself for so long, that I would guilt and shame myself when it came to resting, to not feeling good, to being sick, to having depression, that if I wasn't doing something, then my value was not, wasn't valuable. And so that was something I think I always hear in my head, and I try to really unlearn and disconnect from that idea that our value is based on our productivity and on things that we do, because it's not. And I've seen how it affects our community. I've seen how it affected my parents. I've seen how it affects me. I see how it affects, even my niece and nephew now, when I see them constantly feeling like they need to do something, right? Some huevones if they're sitting down or if they're resting. Some huevones if they're, asking for a break. I had a story with my brother who was telling me he was helping my nephew do his homework, and he's like, he asked me for a break, and I told him no, because if he takes a break, then he's not going to focus on it. And I told him, well, do you remember where you were growing up? And my parents would literally sit there watching you and telling you that you were lazy. And he was like, almost like he had forgotten. I remember that moment. My brother and I were very close, and he almost sat there and he was like, oh my God, I forgot. And he would text me like a week later and be like, oh, I'm telling you that he could do 10 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. And I would start laughing because I would think, he listened to, he took my advice, and that was my little way of trying to break that stigma and that shame and that message that we got. Because yes, of course, as Latinos, I want us to value these things because they are part of what make us who we are. And at the same time, we're also human. We're not machines, and we do get tired. Our bodies, our minds, right? Our mental space, even, right, to solve things, we get exhaustion. And so I think for me, that was the one that I hear so much. And it's almost like a badge of honor for so many of us in that culture, right? Like, I'm always busy. I'm always doing something. I'm always succeeding. It's like, it's not human for us to do that, So yes, that's the one I would say for you to break up with.
What about for you?
Oh gosh. I was born and raised in New York City with some powerhouse women, and just like amazing women who always worked. But I tell you what, wasn't always easy. I resonate with everything you guys said. I'm the oldest born with that whole thing. But one of the things I think is for me, expectations, right, that are placed on us and then we place on ourselves. And also acceptance. Like, we have to accept that sometimes we can't do something, or we should be doing something, or like for my mom, for example, and I love my mom so much, but like whenever I was like, well, mommy, I feel so depressed about this, or this is happening. Well, don't think that way. Pero no, I don't say that. And it was always being shut down, for my being able to express my emotions and being able to express my truth, right? Because I didn't always feel like a powerhouse, but I always felt like I had to be, right? Like I had to be charged, I had to be strong. If I tell you how many people told me after my son died, you have to be strong. Like, really, bitch? How about you try it? Be strong? What does that even mean? So like these labels that we put on ourselves, these labels that we, feel a need to hold ourselves up to, expectations. So for me, I think that's huge, because we even have to be mindful of doing it to our own children. Oh my God, we as a Latino community, Latinx, Latin community, we feel like we are always up, we've been up against them all the time. So it's like, bang, bang, right? And there's this pressure to just always be one step ahead, to be above the line, to prove ourselves, to this, that. And that can become so discouraging. It can make you feel like a loser. And that is so dangerous, because everything that they just talked about. So I would say that is really important. What expectations are we putting on ourselves and others, that we need to check? We need to be like, wait a minute. And then just accepting what we're capable of doing and being grateful for that day of like, oh, today I did this, cheek. So that for me is huge.
Thank you. I haven't taken it. Along with what everyone is mentioning, let's reframe crying, because you mentioned that people, when you were grieving, told you be strong, and it's like, you are being strong. Like, just because you're having feelings, which is absolutely a normal human response, it doesn't mean that you're not being strong. So I think collectively we should eliminate that phrase of his, like, be strong. When someone's crying, more God is, but will allow their bodies to process it. Is this crying tears are exactly the same as a cough
a fart, a burp, okay? The exact same thing. It's what the human body just needs to expel. It's just that it's expelling an emotion, okay? So there is a lot of strength and vulnerability, and let's give it up one more time for all of us. That's a complete stuff on here. I'm gonna look to the organizers. We're good? Okay. Thank you everybody for being here with us. Some of us may linger, some of us may not. Catch us if you can. Oh no, okay, no, never mind. You're still here. It's Q&A time. I wasn't sure when the thumbs up was there. Okay, do we have any questions in the audience? Yes, over there.
I need to tell them about my town song. But I wanted to read the not get what we said thing when you're playing festival. So keeping a lot of the audience here as we become like the first gen to get educated to break financial like bill savings for wells. And you turn around and try to educate on your family and the right and getting big. I get this like I call
Oh yeah.
how is gonna handle that. And once the fight begins to wonder that is very that as adults because you kind of want to you start questioning like actually everything like what do I read? It's like no instead of like kind of deep like deep like what percent towards for that.
It depends on how old you are. Because at 29, my answer may be different. At 59, I'm like, cause I do know a lot. When you look at like I lived, I know a lot. So you can listen or walk away.
That's true. That's true. There's no lie there. When I usually like to speak that up.
I was going to say, for me, I do a lot of work through inner child work, which is really understanding that all of us were children and all of us learned and developed from what we have in our environment, right? The people around us, society, entertainment, I mean, all of these different aspects. And so when I think of family, I think my patience goes up because I always think of them as similar to me, right? When I first started realizing and coming to terms with so many things about my own life and my relationships, that they're also hurting a lot of times, and so I try to be very strategic. I often tend with family members that are open to it because there's always someone that is willing to listen or that's willing to say what you or even just entertain the thought. And there's others who aren't. And so for me, it's always been about kindness with my family because I know that humor is a huge way that they deflect and a huge way that they try to avoid things. So when they say things like that, I laugh and, laugh with them. And I say, yeah, well, if you ever want to talk about it, and they'll be like, okay. And then some of them actually do come back and talk to me and they're like, hey, remember last week when you were asking about that? I was just curious. And I'd be like, yeah, what's up? And I've had peasants call me all the way from other states. I've had family members who oftentimes don't laugh it off at first because it's really that deflection. Like they don't want to go there because they're afraid. And most of the time, other family members have not actually talked about it. It's the first time they're hearing it. So we may think we're close to our family members, but many of us don't go beneath the surface. We have very surface level relationships that when we finally are open and vulnerable, it's awkward. Because we know stuff that we've shared in this experience that's almost scary to talk about it. So for me, that's how I see them. I see them as almost like the child version of themselves and remembering for me, especially with my cousins, because I know what they've gone through. I know their family situations. I know what they were taught. And they were regurgitating the same thing all the time that the men in our family told us. And so when they see me, I think sometimes that makes it a little bit easier to introduce things like that, right? Like, hey, are you okay? Like, hey, I noticed, you told me that you weren't doing so great. If you ever want to talk, you can text me. And I get that. Like I understand that it is harder to process. So I think that helps me a lot to empathize, to have a lot of patience, and also to see them as people who are hurt and build my limits and boundaries from there. If they're willing to talk about it, that's great. If they're not, then I can't do anything else.
And don't expect them to take your advice either. If they ask for it, what you see them doing the opposite, or you see them giving credit to someone else, just
Your boundaries, okay? Just keep your boundaries. Any other questions? Yes, over here in the desk.
Hi, so my question, it's not a question, it's more of a comment. I'm only going to try what goes in here. And this is with that. I also have a sad black show when
Some.
I'll go through it. So it's about, my son is now 31, and I always feel like this until when I'm in Clark and speak the place so we come to our eyes.
Me too.
And I believe that the reason why I'm going to listen to you because you said something that really resonated with me as I was sitting there. And the shame that I feel because I'm having as far long as my people that I'm that's the little more they don't realize it. They have to practice. They get where I am, like I didn't even starting it, working on the shame. And as I had seen, you said that you put yourself aside because you were trying to keep your son alive. And that's what it dawned on me that for all this time, that's what I've been doing. Fighting to keep my son alive. And everything that I've done and the thing that I've been through, the shame that I feel, and neighbors seeing that took his out, and thinking I'm 50.
Great times. Keep your life.
Yeah, I mean, sleeping at a work really hard because I was afraid to go home and my son was did something addiction and I was afraid that he would get killed. So, all of the things that people at my job didn't know that. I know that I still had it for just of the ones that I done, I'm always singing out again for under, It's in that great place. And it's like when I bitch down to some people, I get even later with one day. And such that and I've lost spread and even now the last episode that he had where he was heading gears and credit and I opened up to a few of my friends that they told me, oh, he needs both that. He is called Reddit. We was sleeping at a park called me fire whole gun this of that and thought likely. And I couldn't leave my son. This is suffering, that all of my fair to help get her help even here his party and everything with that. And then, he's like suffered for 7 months. And he told me that the mother, he should tell the next person, he needs to learn his life and treats with that. And as I had to learn how to separate the behaviors in the first day, what I see is the mindset that build hole. And what a beautiful person he is, there is. So that's what they're fault. And they're like, oh, that's his problem. That there's a child about the two brothers and everything. They chose no by son at that team. And when he started when we turned baby and moving us, but it's stuff on it. It's exposed all the you can tell people that may not be well you need to just let it go, let it be down. But when you're a mother, I have that everything could encounter if I son alive and that resin what you said and I said the guy I said, my God, that's what I really like I left myself every day aside, to help my son and I'll go through it for that. Don't brush out like that, but and
Yeah.
thank you.
You know what? God bless you because it's I take it and say hello. I said, all right, I don't get it. I'm an actor. God bless you because we are mothers. That is our heart. People told me all the time to throw my son on the street. I was like, but you know what? That's not happening. And I had to, however it was going to turn out in the end, was really out of my control. But I had to show my son that I loved him, that he meant the world to me, and that he was a beautiful human being, and that no matter what he did, I was not going to stop loving him. And I did have to learn how to practice some self-care, though, because that's actually why I got cancer, because I was such into depression, horrible, and having support of my kid. So my expert advice to you is still like to take care of yourself too. So those things that, that goes to your soul, your friends, keep those friends around you that do speak into you and love into, right? And see him as a human being and not as a thing, as I promised. Nobody wakes up in the morning saying, I want to be an addict. Nobody does that.
I want to be homeless. I want to be this. I want to be, no, they don't. Nobody says that. So, for anyone, so happy that is 7 months. I think that's what that is doing. They thank you. But you can.
Thank you guys for talking to us. I do want people to look around them and realize that a majority of the room is women. The duality in our culture of the Latino man, of being incredibly passionate and carrying a certain kind of emotion, truly helps just this. This guy's crying. We do that to our own environments, right? How can we still this prevent my toucher? How can we tell men access and spaces? How do we really think in allyship? Because at the end of the day, we depend on each other. How do we work? How do we be more inviting towards them to show up and spacer? And what can you guys or you can do outside of you?
Great question. Okay, Harry's guess. So thank you so much, Elio, for your question. Men's mental health matters, just like, anyone's mental health. And I do think that because in our community there's so much stigma around men showing vulnerability, men crying, men showing expressing their emotions, right? So I think as a comunidad we have to do better. But I think oftentimes even as men, as compadres, as homies, right? If your homeboy tells you, hey, like esto me está pasando, I'm going through this, don't invalidate it. Be like, ponte macho, don't say saying statements like that really sends a message that I can't be vulnerable, because that makes me not man enough. So I think even as men, through your comadre, being able to have that space of vulnerability, right? Because then it comes directly from that, as opposed to maybe a woman or a therapist, right? That I'm sharing is like, because sometimes it's like, oh, well, she's a therapist, she has to say that. And no, right? I've seen so many men in my family slowly breaking that stigma, and it makes me so proud because I know that for future generations to come, it's going to be better with their men. And that makes me really, really happy. I'm just so proud. Yeah.
I just wanted to tie this into what I had said earlier around gender violence, because that is what patriarchy, machismo, all of it is reinforced by all of us. This is not just a men's thing. If you've ever seen, maybe a sibling or a mom keep telling that, oh no, those niños do this or men do that, or, we all do it. Women do it, men do it, queer people do it. We reinforce these narratives and these ideas. And so I think this is really a responsibility for all of us to not do that, to be able to support one another. I meet so many girlfriends who often tell me, I want my I don't like men as a cousin, or I want them to be like this or that. And then they get upset when they don't communicate, when they don't get the vulnerability, when they don't get the connection. I heard the opposite too from, other men, like, well, I can't do this because my dad would tell me that, you're gay if you do that, if you cry or if you show emotion. Or even, moms, oh no, men have to behave this way because they're the head of the house, so they can't be weak, yada, yada. I mean, we're all reinforcing these things subconsciously because it's what we're taught. And so going back to what Yanita said, it's really about not, realizing that, understanding our biases and being there, as sisters, as brothers, as siblings, their family, friends, right? And just see each of us as people rather than our gender and our sexuality.
It starts in why is my mic on?
The battery. No, the battery doesn't go.
It starts in the home. That's what I was saying before. Who gives birth, first of all? We do. So as soon as that baby boy comes out, we gotta be like, it's okay to cry. I'm gonna hear what you have to say. We have to allow that. And then they feel like it's okay. And then as men, in our communities, like Lewis was saying, like, be the example of that. Allow yourself to be vulnerable, right? So that you're not only showing someone that, but then you're also available to receive their vulnerability instead of reacting with sissy or PUSSY or you this, you that, the label thing, you know?
Absolutely. So model vulnerability, and then I'm going to quickly suggest, since we're out of time now, you all have phones. There's a note section in your phone. Go ahead and start noting down resources, mental health resources, and share the note with your homies, with your homegirls, and your family members. Not when you're in an argument, please. When someone is really upset, you don't talk about go to therapy. Don't say that when they're upset. Okay, it brings a stigma. But you know that you can use my directory. We're all on it, acclaimedtherapy.com, and maybe even identify some therapists on there. Keep it on your list and go ahead and share it. We can do something, very emotional, share our stories, but also the practical things. So with that, round of applause for all of you in the audience.
I don't know how many of y'all got strong, but I was really strong during that whole time. Like really, 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 really strong. Let's give it up one more time. I was here all day with the panels, and I have to tell you, this has been the only panel that everybody has met each other. As soon as they walk in, I'm like, let me get a hug. And we had panels that have color coordinated without talking to each other. It's amazing the energy, everything that is brought forward with whatever the topic is of the panel has totally come together. And I don't think I saw each of you. We're gonna take a group picture, a couple group pictures for some Revolución. Stick around. All our vendors are set up. If you need some more cafecito, Equamex Cafe, can't recommend them enough. They're Equamex Latte, the biscuit latte. The restrooms are down here. Oh, we have the Mero Pachanguero in the house. Let's go. We're here because of the visionary that is
I just wanted to first thank everybody who was here. Like, I haven't been able to attend the panels because we're great, trying to get the vendor situated and so forth. How always do that? I don't know. I was thinking I'm loud enough. But first of all, we talked about what this panel was going to be in like a lot throughout the course of history. I was just saying personally without being emotional.
Okay, it's okay.
Ever since I moved to LA, I've gotten very close. So, but I wanted to thank you. I know that one of the things that we have a panel that's going to be taking place. That's a digital players panel. Anybody who's here, you're welcome to stay the entire day. We even have a comedy show that's at night. It's at 7:30. I just wanted to thank you for even supporting Revolución. So if you're here, just consider yourself a pass holders. I want you guys to be involved in anything out there. There's 2 sets of binders. And these people have given their heart to the event. They were here, they're recording videos for us. They're constantly putting stuff out there even now. Just please, even if you don't get it, go support them, show them some love. They're our community. Like, these are small businesses, and there's 2 portions of it. One's in the atrium. You got to get your agua fresca because it's so good. Those of you who haven't woken up like I haven't, the coffee. On the other side where you guys came in, there's a whole cultural village there with a lot of, different things like hats and lanyards and books. And so please just stop by, show them some love. And again, everybody here, you're one ticket, I can't be ticket. So stay with us, spend the time with us, really support the panelists that are coming up. And I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. And if you see me out there and just want to say hi, that if I'm over here in shorts, if I'm moving tables, so, but thank you. Then we got therapist for now. Luna's been therapist for like 2 months now.
And so I want to thank you, Larissa and Diana. Thank you so much. I'm truly honored to have you here. And it's an honor to have all of you here. It's truly honored. Thank you very much. So.
No, you see, I wasn't lying when I invited you to stay all day. It's great, bro. So bad. And
It's best.
and it's nothing to and we're being vulnerable. So hating. Oh, that's a little weird.
So
All of this could be filled every panel, every day, all day, every day. After last year's Revolución, he started working on this. There's been day in, day out videos, invitations, sponsorship requests. There's no reason that in a city like Los Angeles, not just because it's Hispanic Heritage Month, that this whole hotel shouldn't be filled, like all the rooms booked. That these seats be filled, that the gala be filled. You don't need to know the behind the scenes. Like this reaction should already tell you everything. You guys know in Hollywood, like what gets axed, what gets picked up, whatever. Like we get to invest in ourselves. You invested today. You invested because you know people, because they reached out, because they did their job. We all get to invest in each other. We have graphic designers. We have like content creators. We have the space mechanic. Oh my God, NASA, for freaking sake, like NASA, like, and when we talk about we don't see each other on TV, we don't see each other in film, but we're in person. We should get to see. I shouldn't be the only one that values who's here, the men in our communities, the professions. Everyone gets to see what's possible. So go out, these small businesses raised by immigrants right there, like Inglewood, like, I mean, Corona was 2025. Revolución.
Just I get to talk here.
Yeah, well, that's support these businesses.
We got to
but personally,
Revolución 2024, part 2 is happening in Connecticut. Y'all East Coast people got family on the East Coast. It's happening at Sacred Heart University, October 18 and 19. Tickets are still available. Rev HHF. Go to our Instagram, all of that jazz, because we're gonna have the East Coast version. And I was like, let the East Coast show the West Coast what it's all about and how we do things. So, let him be right. Let him be right. And then 2025, like for real people, like come back with a vengeance. Stand up, act back. Yeah, vamos a tomar foto. Thank you so much. Everyone.